In this video, we're going to look at making our enemy character shoot projectiles using instantiation. So right now in our level, everything that we have is just kind of placed there at the beginning. And while things like the dog or the shrimp can delete themselves, we can't create objects on the fly. So that's what instantiation does. It allows us to create projectiles, in this case for the enemy, and they can be created on the fly at will whenever we need them. We don't have to have them placed in the scene to begin with. So to start out with, I've made a bullet scene, a bullet object. Bullet.tscene is mine, and it's just got our basic circle sprite and a collision shape, area 2D. And it's got a script on it. All its script does is just move it on the screen, on the scene. So if I take, for example, go to my level here, and we just drop one of these in, we'll just put it in there somewhere and kind of set it in the middle. If I run my scene, what we'll see is that my bullet just moves off the, run it one more time there so you can see it, just zooms off the screen there. So once it's created, it knows how to move itself. So that part's already covered. So what we want to do now is, instead of just putting one in the scene to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. We can have it created every few seconds or however long you want by the enemy itself. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the enemy script. So here's my bullet script again. We're going to go to my enemy script. So there are basically 3 steps to instantiating an object. The first thing we need to do is preload, and then we create the instance, and then we add it to the scene. So to preload the object, this is basically just telling this script that you have something you may create, an instance of. Up here at the top by your variables, you want to say on ready variable, and then give it a name. So I'm going to call it bullet object, and then preload, and then the path to the bullet scene. So I want bullet tscene here. So again, we're just saying create me a variable called bullet object, and that is going to be this bullet scene that I have created, basically this scene. So that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do is actually create the instance. So I'm going to go ahead for now and just put this in our physics process. And we can create the instance. We, again, create a variable. So bullet equals, and then bullet object. So what we called it up here, this is the variable name. We want to create a bullet object and instance, and that will create it for us. And then the last thing we need to do is add it to the scene. We want to add it to the root of our scene, so you can use get tree, get root, and add child, and we want to add the bullet is the one we want to create. This right here is what we want to add. So those are basically your 3 steps. Again, you want to preload it, you want to create the instance, and then you want to add it to the scene. You got to do all 3 of those things to make it work. Now I'm going to go ahead and save and run this so we can see what happens. And as you can see, it is working. It is creating our bullets. We're getting 1 every frame, which is why we're kind of getting this smear across the page, this kind of continuous smear. So there's 2 problems. One is we're getting way too many bullets because we're getting 1 every frame, and they're not coming from our shrimp enemy. So let's start out with making them. Let's start with making our bullets not happen every frame, but maybe every like half second or so. So the easiest way to have something happen on a delay or on a regular interval is to use a timer node. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my shrimp here, and I'm going to add a child node of type timer. And you can type it in, search up there, and create. And over here in my inspector, we can set how long we'd like our timer to be. So let's say maybe half a second. And you can choose if you want it to start at the beginning, start whenever this is created, which in this case we do. And if you want it to only happen once, or if you want it to happen repeatedly. In this case, maybe I want it to happen repeatedly every half a second or so. And again, you can just start with picking a time here and see what you think, and then you can always adjust later. So now that we've got my timer, let's head back to my script. So we need to, when the timer goes off, it broadcasts a signal, and that's this timeout signal. So let's go ahead and connect that up to our script. So we're going to put it on the shrimp and on timer timeout. So now when the timer goes off, that's what this timer timeout function is, that's when we actually want to create the bullet. So I'm going to move that code and I'm going to put it down here. So let's save that real quick and run that and see if that works better. So now, as you can see, we are getting a bullet created every half a second. Again, if you feel like this is too fast, you can adjust it. But I'm going to leave it for now. So they're creating at the right time. They're creating every half a second now instead of every frame, which is good. But they're not at the right place. So let us look at how to get them at the right place. So what happens is when they're created, they go to wherever it is that they kind of exist already, which is just kind of wherever it puts them. So we want to set their position when they're created so that their position is at the shrimp. So if you remember how to set positions, we can do that basically the same, bullet.position.x equals, and we want the shrimp's position, which we can get with just position.x. Same for y. And that should give us them now being created from the shrimp object. Now you'll also notice they're always firing to the right instead of, we might want them to fire to the left when he's pointing left. And that's because, again, our bullet, it knows how to move itself, but its velocity is always set to 10, so it's always going to move right. But we can also have our shrimp set that too. So we have to have some way of determining whether the shrimp is facing left or right. There's a couple ways we could do this. We could look at the shrimp's velocity, right? If its x is positive, then it's facing right, and if it's negative, it's facing left. We can also look at this flip h to see if the sprite is flipped. So I'm going to go ahead and use the flip h. This isn't the only way, of course, but it's what I'll show you. So if $, shrimp underscore flip h. So if it's flipped, and so I got to look at my shrimp here real quick. So it looks like in its normal position it's facing right, so when it's flipped it'll be facing left. So if he's facing left, whoop, put that in the wrong place. Let's get this. So if it's facing left, we want the bullet dot velocity dot x to be -10. And we could put an else in here. We can put an else in here if you want. It's not strictly necessary because the default will be 10. It's got 10 by default, but we could do something like else bullet dot velocity dot x equals 10. And let's go ahead and save that and run that. And now we can see that it shoots in the direction we're facing. Now, of course, right now, this isn't going to actually do anything. I'm going to get him out of the way there. The bullets can hit the dog, you can see it, and we don't die unless the shrimp hits. But that should be something you should already be able to handle. So again, for instantiating, you need to make sure you do the preload, create the instance, and the adding it to the scene. And if you want to do any adjustments, basically like changing where the position is going to be or the velocity or anything like that, you can do that in your script. And you can also put things in the bullet. So for example, having the bullet kill the dog, I would go ahead and just put that right on the bullet here. It can do that. It can handle that just fine. So with this, you have the basic skills to make some pretty neat games. Good luck.